called it The Traveler.
Greetings, programs, and welcome to another episode of Blistered Reviews. I'm your host, Shard Carterfeld, and today we'll be taking a look at one of the biggest releases of not only 2014, but possibly ever, Destiny.
We've always known the darkness would return. To finish what it started. To take our home. That's why I've been looking for you for centuries. There are only a few of you who carry the light of the Traveler, who have the strength to fight the darkness. I'm not going to lie to you, Guardian. You are Earth's last hope. If you fail, everything you know, everything humans have ever known, will be gone forever. So, you know, no pressure.
And so we come to it at last. Destiny. Possibly the single most hyped game in the history of the medium, or at least it certainly feels that way. As those who watch my work regularly will know, Destiny's beta left me feeling excited about the final game. Admittedly, I was a little concerned about the seeming lack of focus regarding the game's story elements, but considering Bungie's past titles and their success at telling compelling narratives, I held out hope that this was simply an issue of the beta. Unfortunately, as it turns out, those hopes were rather misplaced, and along with some other glaring issues, what I'm left with is a game that I find rather flummoxing to review. I could go into detail about Destiny's story, but frankly, if the game doesn't care enough to do so, I'm not sure why I should bother either. Basically, it's the future, and the world has gone to shit with aliens and monsters and whatever having filled the solar system and reducing humanity to a single city, guarded by the dormant remains of a great being known as the Traveler, that exist in the form of a city-sized globe. Players are cast in the roles of champions of this city known as Guardians, who have been empowered by the energy of the Traveler in order to take back for humanity what had been lost. It's a setup that raises a lot of questions, but unfortunately, Destiny's not really all that interested at this juncture in answering them. Oh, there's lore aplenty regarding its world for those prepared to look outside the game for it, but funnily enough, a series of text entries on a website are not a proper substitute for cutscenes, character development, and the like. And if you're going to go the text entries route as a means of optional exposition, then at least follow BioWare's example and have the common sense to give players access to it via an in-game codex. Either Bungie simply could not be bothered to do this, or else someone foolishly thought that justifying the existence of a cross-media mobile app was more important. In which case, allow me to quote one of the great sages of our age in response, and say, wrong! Destiny doesn't even bother to let players imbue their characters with any real personality or backstory of their own, and frankly, I'm amazed they even bothered to give the player character a voice at all. And while the second half of the game's story does start to pick up speed, it's still not nearly enough for my taste, especially when combined with as anticlimactic of an ending as I've encountered in some time. Former BT contributor Yusuf Al-Shaker got it right when he said that Destiny would have benefited immensely from taking a page out of Mass Effect's book when it came to telling a story. It really is amazing that the same developer that gave us such excellent narratives in Halo, ODST, and Reach would drop the ball so badly on this front in their very next project. Even the original Halo did a better job of telling a complete story that also served as the first chapter of a larger narrative. but I think I can guess what may have gone wrong this time. Namely, that Destiny suffers from trying to be too many things for too many people at once. Bungie's been quick to point out they don't consider Destiny an MMO, and on one level, that's ridiculous. After all, the game features a large and always online game world that multiple sets of otherwise unrelated players will have to explore simultaneously. It has guilds, both small and large-scale co-op missions, the latter of which are even called raids for Pete's sake, and a heavy focus on kitting out your character with the best gear around once you're done with the story so you can excel in PvP and monstrously complex raids. So, obviously Destiny is an MMO by any other name, right? Well, not exactly. For one thing, Destiny's 4 main levels may be relatively large and open by FPS standards, but even most starting MMOs will offer players far more real estate to explore and play around in. And while Destiny does technically feature 3 different classes, in practice, the differences between them in terms of gameplay are minimal at best, and become almost non-existent once players open up late-game customization options. Those who like to play as a healer, or someone who summons or builds pets in other games, for example, be they MMOs or even multiplayer-focused shooters like Team Fortress 2, will be fresh out of luck in Destiny. And while Destiny features incredibly sharp and well-implemented gunplay in terms of the moment-to-moment and basic combat, in terms of overall level and mission design, the game has a nasty tendency towards repeating the same handful of ideas time and time again. Also, gameplay outside of combat in Destiny is nearly non-existent. Considering how fun it can be to simply tool around on the space bikes that serve as Destiny's equivalent to mounts, for example, you would think including some sort of racing-based side game would be a natural idea, but nope. Similarly, while Destiny offers players a number of personal spaceships that they can eventually craft for travel between worlds, as of right now, these vehicles are purely cosmetic in gameplay terms. And for a game that on the surface at least has so much in common with Borderlands, it's depressing how vanilla and basic Destiny's choice of weapons end up being. It's hard to get excited about gaining new gear when the only difference between it and your current arsenal is an arbitrary number that limits how much damage it can do. Hell, Destiny even rewards the same weapon to all players upon beating the story, regardless of their class, which says it all, really. And yet, I can't say I regret buying Destiny or even spending time with it. At its best, the game can be immense fun, and said best occurs fairly frequently at that. There's something compelling about exploring Destiny's gorgeous environments, which represent the very height of console game graphics at the moment. And while Destiny may only have 4 main levels, each of these levels does feature visual designs and even general layouts that completely stand apart from one another. For all its annoyances and frustrating elements, it's still remarkably easy to get caught up in Destiny, and more than once I hopped on intending to play a quick session, only to end up losing hours to the game. Also, enough cannot be said about a Destiny's amazing score, which is so good it almost makes up for the game's many story failures all by itself. Almost. And that's why I had so much trouble writing this review and especially scoring this game. Destiny is too good of a game to be called bad or even average, and yet too flawed to be called great. During my times with Destiny, there have been moments that have completely captured and held my attention as well as any game I've played recently, but I would then find myself utterly frustrated by a lack of focus mere minutes later. And really, at its core, that's the problem. Destiny does not know what kind of game it wants to be. Is it a standard first-person shooter with an added optional focus on multiplayer functionality? Is it a proto-MMO held back by its developers' unwillingness to embrace the best conventions of the genre in their quest not to be labeled? Is it an epic science fantasy tale looking to create the next great fictional universe for would-be fans to fall in love with and explore for years to come? Is it all of these things? None of them? I'm not sure anyone at Bungie can honestly answer that question at this point, whatever their PR might say otherwise, and if they don't know what Destiny is, then how the hell is the average gamer supposed to figure it out? Look, love it or hate it, there's no denying that Destiny's initial launch has been the kind of success that most publishers can only dream of. Activision is already claiming Destiny is now the world's best ever selling new IP, although compared to what, they're not saying, and honestly, it's no great stretch to believe they could be right. The game earned $325 million in its first 5 days of release, and there's every reason to believe it will continue to have strong sales going into the 2014 holiday season, and I doubt anyone ever really expected otherwise. Between the astronomical amount of PR put into the game by Activision and the remarkable track record of Bungie, the idea that Destiny would have anything but a massive launch was laughable at best. That was never the real question that needed answering anyways. No, what is yet to be seen is whether or not Destiny will have the kind of staying power it needs to have to match up to the lofty plans its developer and publisher have in store for its future. After all, Bungie's not been shy about saying that they have at least a 10-year plan for the IP and a significant number of expansions and DLC for its current iteration. Which is all well and good, but I can't help but wonder how many people will actually still be seriously playing Destiny come even just a few months from now. One need only look at how WildStar, for example, is making adjustments to its future content plans to see that lengthy and complicated raids alone a sustainable endgame does not make. And they at least allow for the possibility of pickup groups in their big raids. It'll be very interesting to see just what kind of content we see in initial Destiny DLC, that's for sure. And that's the thing. I intend to. While I doubt I'll be playing Destiny religiously going forward, if for no other reason than all the other calls on my time that I have to deal with, I do intend to keep up with the game, and at the very least stick with it through its first couple of expansions. After all, one of Destiny's greatest potential strengths, and one that it shares with MMOs, is the fact that it is in fact a living game. Indeed, already following its launch, Bungie has begun making tweaks, such as increasing the frequency of the large-scale random events that are one of the title's best elements. And as I said, it's not like Bungie is incapable of telling a great story. And for that matter, for all it's hidden away out of game, the actual lore of Destiny is both interesting and brimming with potential. That would be a great description for Destiny as a whole at the moment, filled with potential that is yet to be fully tapped. One can only hope that now that Bungie has gotten all the hard work of establishing the game and its universe out of the way, in the months ahead, they can get around to giving us the game I know they're capable of. As it stands now, Destiny will certainly give players an overall experience that's worth their money in the short term, but whether or not it becomes more than that remains to be seen. Score, 6 out of 10 above average. Recommendation, try it out. And that's going to do it for this episode of Blistered Reviews. Be sure to come back next week when I'll be presenting my review of the hotly anticipated Wii U title, Hyrule Warriors, and part 2 of BT Classics, the Wii Retrospective. Until then, I'm Sean Cronefeld, wishing you all happy gaming.